Hi folks. A couple of people remarked that I hadn't been very active online over the last couple of weeks. This is the reason. This little miniature computer, it's called the BBC Microbit. It arrived in work and I started investigating it, and it wasn't long before I started to become kind of obsessed with it almost. They're supplied to schools by the BBC, and apparently over 1 million of these have been supplied already. We have 200 of them or thereabouts in our school. And it's basically, it just looks like a little circuit board, and it is. But on the back are 25 little dots, 5 by 5. That is an array of LEDs, so they can all be lit up in any sort of sequence that you want. Now this immediately created a wave of nostalgia in me, because I remembered owning some handheld video games back when I was a child. Now, probably nobody under 40, maybe nobody under 35 will remember these kinds of games. They had names like Astro Wars, Munchman, Galaxy Invader, and others. That was 3 that I owned. There was some. I remember really wanting one called BMX Flyer, and I never had that one. But they're basically like an early version of what would later become the Game Boy and the PSP. You only had one game on them, and the display was a sequence of LEDs. Slightly better than this, because the LEDs were shaped like the game character, and you had a couple of controls, usually left, right, and fire, or left, right, up, down, to control your game character. So, nostalgia is a great thing, right? Another kind of nostalgia was kicking in that my first home computer, the ZX Spectrum, it came packaged with BASIC, the language, which stands for Beginner's All-Purpose Symbolic Instruction Code, if anyone's interested. It's an obsolete computer language now, but the early home computers, the first generation of home computers, all came with BASIC built in, whether you had a BBC Micro, a Commodore 64, a Spectrum, an Amstrad, you had BASIC. So as soon as you turn the computer on, you're thrown immediately into a programming environment. That's something you don't get today. And it's something that I miss about computing. I miss a great deal. Back in the early days, the computer magazines that you bought used to feature program listings that you could type in. So yes, you did buy computer games on tape or cartridge, depending on what type of computer you had. And you loaded them in and you played them, and it was fine and you enjoyed them. But a more primitive kind of game that was kind of, I suppose, at the level of the old Atari VCS games. Remember the Atari console? These more primitive games, you could type them in. So a program listing in BASIC would be printed in a magazine. You'd prop the magazine up beside your computer and you would laboriously type this thing in, and then you'd press run and you'd get a game. And it was I know some people didn't get this, and some people hated the fact that pages of their magazines were devoted to this. But I loved that, because you were just evoking a computer game out of thin air. And I learned how to program in BASIC to some extent, because as I typed these things in, it would start to register with me what each line of code actually did. I would start to learn that you had to do something like if inky string equals speech marks p speech marks then, and so on, and that would move your character. So I was able to make my own very primitive computer games as well, but I was so young at the time, like 12 years old, that I wasn't able to do it at the same caliber as the people who were getting published in magazines. And I've often thought that I kind of wish I had been a little bit older when the home computer era began in the early 1980s. If I had been a little bit older, I think I might have made more of it. But I'm still very nostalgic for that time period. So fast forward to today, you don't get a programming environment on your computer. Everything's about user friendliness, instant accessibility, and no delay. You know, it's like the generation of instant gratification. That's what goes today. So you can do all sorts of powerful things with your computer that you couldn't do in the beginning. But it's not the same. You know, you load up Microsoft Word, that's for word processing and nothing else. You load up something like Apple GarageBand, that's for making music and nothing else. You load up, a program like the one I'm going to use in a minute, which is Serif Movie Plus. All I can do with that is movie editing, nothing else. And your experience of computing today lacks this sort of quality. How do I describe it? Back in the beginning, when I knew a bit of computer code, it meant that I was able to look at a computer screen and think, this is mine to do with as I want. I can do anything. I can make anything I want manifest on this screen in any way that I want. And I can animate it any way I want, interact with it any way I want. All of these possibilities are mine because I have total control of the computer through a programming language. You don't get that today. You can only look at your computer screen and do the things that the apps let you do. Unless you're a coder. But this is why it's so difficult. Computers are so complicated today. So few people are programmers. And because of that complexity, how do you even begin to get started down that road? That's the difficulty. It was simple enough back in the 1980s that one person could learn to program and one person could make a game that they could sell and make money on. It would be published and people all over the country, maybe all over the world, would be playing it. It could be the work of one person. That's much harder now. I know there is a thriving indie games scene, which is maybe a little bit like that, but it still tends to involve teams of programmers. And in the big budget gaming scene, the credits list on a game is about the size of a credits list on a movie. So, I miss the old days, and I feel like I missed out in the old days. So when I was looking at this and realizing that I could program this little display to do anything I wanted, it gave me that do anything feeling for the first time since I've experienced it since the 8-bit computing era in the early 1980s. I know it's primitive, but that doesn't matter. It still has that feeling of those early handheld games. And I was looking at this and I was thinking, can I actually write a game that I can fit on 25 pixels? A game that I can play and that will amuse me, even if only for a brief period. And I thought to myself, okay, what can I do with this? And the idea that I had was, I'll have a game character along the bottom here, bottom 5 pixels. I can move him left and right. There are 2 buttons on this device, a button here and a button here, that I can use as controls for my character. Now, what else can I make happen? And I thought, okay, let's have an enemy missile appear in a random cell along the top and begin to fall downwards. And my task as the player is to avoid that missile with these buttons. Real simple game concept, but still a game. And the very first day of trying to code this, I was able to make it happen. And I haven't did coding like that since I was a young teenager. Now, I have done a little bit of coding since then. I became very proficient in the language Pascal when I was doing my A levels, but that's still a long time ago. That was when I was, about 19, and nobody uses Pascal anymore. The language that's being made available for programming this is Python, and Python is the popular programming language. And I found that I was able to get into it very, very easily, purely because the task that I was trying to do with it wasn't overly complicated. This is why this device is genius. You can conceptualize in your head the result that you want, and you can get that result going in maybe 10 to 20 lines of computer code, maybe even less than that if it's nothing too complicated that you're thinking up. But the game that I was describing to you there was probably 20 lines of code and no more. So it just meant me sitting down for a little while with some Python documentation in front of me, and making sure that I put the colons and the brackets in the right place, and kept the rules of the language correct, and I compiled it, and I had a couple of errors to work through, which is always the way with programming. But I was making progress the very first day, and I was getting really excited about it because I felt like that kid again with his ZX Spectrum. So this is nostalgia, and it's also brand new, and the skills that you learn programming one of these things are directly transferable to real life computer programming situations, because that Python is the language that people are using. So I'm really looking forward to getting this, working in the school where I work, and getting the kids involved in it as well. I really love it. And you can do more with this than what I'm talking about right now. It has an accelerometer built into it, which means that I can hold it like this, and if I tilt it in a certain direction, I can make the program respond to that and recognize what direction I've tilted it in either the X, the Y, or even the Z axis. So really wasn't expecting that to be on it. It also has a compass on it, so you can program it with respect to the actual magnetism of the Earth. It's got these things along the bottom that you can attach crocodile clips to, so you can connect this to another device. That as long as the device is able to read or send a voltage, you can program this to respond to that, or to actually send a voltage out through one of these things. That means you could connect it to any number of devices, or you could even connect it to another microbit device. A project that I want to take on in the not too distant future is to program a basic game of, not basic, but battleships. The perfect game for something like this is battleships, with two of these connected together via crocodile clips, so that you're actually playing against another player on another microbit device. I think that's not going to be too difficult to do, and it'll be an interesting challenge to put together. I saw someone online had created a game of Pong, where the little ball went between two devices back and forth, and that was interesting. But I think battleships would be even more interesting. So when I had created my first game, I decided to see if I could make it any more complicated. So I thought to myself, right, what if there are different types of enemies at the top of the screen? So I had the first enemy, which was the missile that comes down towards me. And then I thought I could use these 5 pixels to put a wall across the top, and the wall would come down the screen towards me. And in a random spot in that wall is a tiny gap. And your task as the player, as the wall comes down towards you, is to fit your sprite, if I can call it a sprite, into the gap, and make sure you don't hit the wall. So within a very short space of time, I had that programmed. Then I thought, right, what if something else can fall down? What if there's like friendlies or survivors that are falling? and you have to catch them. If you catch 10 of them, let's say, you get an extra life. If you miss 10 of them, you get a life taken away. Implemented a score counter, life counter, all very easy to do. And I was able to, you just, things, little touches like when you get an extra life, a heart appears on the screen, or the LEDs make the shape of a heart. And when you lose a life, the LEDs make the shape of a skull. So it was so easy to do, and I think kids will get a lot out of this. So when I'd finished that game, I decided to try and make a little firework display. In other words, like a random pixel would light up and then it would explode outwards. I got that running in an hour or two. And then I thought, could I make a game out of that? So I decided I'll use the accelerometer for that one. So I had my character on the screen, and he would move about as I rotated this thing. And one of those fireworks, which I was then thinking of as a bomb, would appear in the screen, and it would start very, very dim, and it would start to glow. And when it reached the full brightness, it would explode. So your task as the player was to roll yourself into it, which is like this how you diffuse it, right? You had to roll yourself into it before the time runs out. And then as soon as you get that one, another one appears and you roll over to it. And if the time runs out, bang, you lose a life. So that's the one I'm working on at the minute. I've got it programmed, but there's a couple of bugs I need to iron out. So do you want to see the games? I'll show you them now. So here's a close-up of the microbit. You can see there's a little light on it, and I've plugged a micro USB cable in here, which is plugged into my PC on the other end. That's what's giving the microbit its power. Right here on this side, this is a socket for a little battery pack that you can plug in. It takes 2 AAA batteries so that you can do what you want with it on the move when you're running your programs. But right now I'm going to run it directly off USB power. So I'm going to press the reset button, which is right here, and turn it around and begin my little game. So here's the word ready scrolling across the screen. And already you can see that things are coming down the screen towards my character. So here we go. I move left and right to squeeze through the gaps in the wall. This slow moving pixel coming down, that's a friendly smiley face because I collected him. That's another one. The missiles look a little different. They move down the screen faster and they leave a trail. You'll see one of those in a moment. That's how I decided to program it, so that I could tell the difference between the two. That's a missile just went past. There's another wall. I consciously made the game start off slow and then start to speed up as more waves of attack. Whoops, missed that one. So I get a frown. Oh, there's a life lost because I hit the missile. It's kind of an interesting effect because the first time you see a pixel at the top of the screen, you're not sure whether it's a hostile or a friendly, so you're not sure whether you should move towards it or move away. And sometimes you make the wrong decision and get hit. Whoa! They're like that. It's getting rather fast now, requiring better reflexes. Yep. If I collect 10 of these guys, I'll get an extra life. Maybe I'll be lucky enough to get that far. Whoops. The waves do occur randomly. So I have no idea what's coming next from one game to the other. There's no planned structure to what way I'm attacked. Yay, extra life. Oops. I went for the wrong one there, but thankfully I missed it.
Wrong move again. Gotta be careful I don't miss 10 of those guys or I'm gonna lose a life. And I think I might be on my last life. Oh! Last life now. I'm getting 1 point for every attack that I survive or every man I collect. And I'll get a score at the very... Oops, there we go. I should get my score at the very end, which I think is now. Yeah. Score 62 points. And the game resets back to the beginning. Ready. And off we go. Good fun. Here you can see the little script I created for the firework effect. It's very, very rapid, but what it does is it plots a point in a random LED and it explodes outwards from there. This was trickier than it sounds because if you plot a point outside the range of the LED, in other words, if I choose point number 6 on the x-axis, it reports an error when you try to run the program. So I had to put some sort of validation in there that would actually make this work but prevent it from plotting points outside the LED. But it was an interesting challenge and I got it done, and this is what formed the basis of my bomb disposal game, which I'll show you next. Okay, here is my bomb disposal game. It's a little bit buggy, but you can see me tilting the device. Here we go. 3 flashes means I successfully disposed of the bomb. There's another one appearing and I got that one. So I'm moving my character around. A bomb will appear anywhere. Yeah, there's a little bit of a bug here and it seems to keep appearing in the same place sometimes. There's it over there as well. And here we go. There it is. It's a bit easy at the minute, so I'm going to have to do something to make this game a bit harder. Okay, I'm going to fail to collect the bomb this time, just so you can see it exploding. It gets brighter and brighter and brighter, and then boom! It explodes. I'm going to miss this one, I think. Whoop! Missed that one, yep. Let's get this one. So yeah, I'm looking forward to finishing this game, adding a score table and a life counter, all the usual things. And I'm looking forward to doing other projects. So if you have any ideas for games that I could program, please do share them with me.